Hello, dear friends, and welcome to our new podcast focusing on white wine tasting. Join us as we uncover new grape varieties and introduce you to wine producers that may have slipped past your attention. Additionally, we will delve into the historical, geographical, and ethical aspects of wine with a particular focus on sustainability. My name is Darina Blogina.
And my name is Uli Fussenegger.
Today we are back to Basel and we have something special on our table. Could you please introduce our tonight's guest?
A wine we brought from Italy. It's another one from Piedmont. And it's a Roero Arneis. Well, maybe you don't know, Arneis is the grape, and Roero is this pretty small part of Piedmont, not far away from Cuneo, in the province of Cuneo. To be a bit more specific, what we have here is a Reserva from this grape Arneis from the year 2019. And the wine has even a name. I just have a look. It's called Brick Varomaldo. And the producer is a very nice family. And the name of the producers is Generai. We should also mention that we stayed there like almost a year ago for the first time. And tasted the wines there. They are also producing, of course, red wines, but this is not the subject of this podcast.
Right. So, we have been passing by last year and we have discovered this wine producer. How did you track the trace of this producer? Where did you find them?
I am not sure where I experienced it for the first time, but I think it was also in a restaurant in Cuneo where this wine was served. And then, as always, I asked the owner, who are these guys, where does it come from? And it's a very small village in the Roero called Monta. And so we decided, as we like this wine, we should actually pass by and get to know the people, get to know who produces this, see the surrounding, have a more fundamental test on the taste of the whole thing. But maybe also to mention, it's always different when you bring a wine to another country. Like we now did to Basel, and you taste it here. So the experience is always a bit different, and I think it's also a very good test, kind of how consistent that taste remains in another country.
Why do you think it's like that we experience the same taste in a different surrounding with a different perception?
I think your mood would be different. That's quite an important thing. Secondly, the air is different. It smells different around. The climate is different. So, which is of course all a bit connected to your mood. But I made this experience quite often. I have to say that, for example, I brought a rosé from the Provence, where you normally drink it in a very hot summer, and then you try it out here in Basel, and you're a bit disappointed because it kind of does not really fit to the surrounding here. I think it's like with all pleasant things, it depends on many factors. That's why I also think it's hard to objectivize too much these aspects of wine tasting. That's why I believe it's so important to have a real individual approach. And even if 100 official tastings tell you this wine is fantastic and it's super good rated, it's still possible that you don't like it.
Sometimes it's just not your thing, even though objectively maybe it's something high quality, high end product.
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
your cup of tea.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, what do you think? Maybe we have a bit of a smell and then talk later a bit about the grape, because I think it's not very well known out of Italy.
Okay, yes, let's do that. I must say, I experienced the smell here in Switzerland in a different way than it was in Italy. I totally confirm that theory, because now I don't know whether it's temperature or an extremely warm day here in Basel with a different humidity than it is in Italy. But to me, the smell seems more related to the region where we have tried it. And if I'm remembering correctly, there are fields of nuts, of hazelnuts. And that's what I could grasp at first when now I sniffed a bit into my glass. So for me, this is this nut taste, and specifically hazelnut.
I would totally agree. This nut taste is present even here in Basel. I think there is a tiny bit of menthol taste, not taste, but smell, which is, some people call it petrol also. It's this kind of an alcoholic aspect. I cannot tell it kind of more precisely because it's so difficult to describe a smell because you always would use synonyms for it. But yeah, maybe it's important to say that this wine is from 2019 and it's already, it's relatively old for a white wine. That's why it's also a Reserva. They try to produce it a bit more consistent. Maybe also to mention, for me, the color is clearly yellow. I mean, it's not deep yellow, it's a light yellow, but it does not really have green aspects as we sometimes experience.
Yes, for instance, with Grüne Veltlinge, we can sometimes see that it's more on the white or on the green side. So there is a cold undertone of this yellow. Here it's clearly a very light yellow color, but with a very warm undertone.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, shall we take a hit?
With this Reserva wines, Reserva, that means something special, as I understand that. And for me, it's very interesting to try them. We have tried already one, I think, so far, and it's somewhat different from a regular wine. For me, sometimes I experienced as a mixed feeling in taste, because at first it seems to me that the taste is very rich and outstanding, and almost, I would say, too much to experience. Maybe a bit too rough, I would say, or even sometimes I can describe it as an aggressive attack to my perception, but in a good way, of course, in a refreshing way. Here, I could really understand what you mean under this petrol smell, because I could feel that in the taste because of the alcohol. I don't know how many percentage, like what is the percentage of this wine?
Let's have a look. 13.5.
So it's quite a normal one, right? It's not, maybe it's on the higher side?
It's for a white wine, it's on the higher side, yes.
Yes, so I could feel this effect of alcohol. Again, I could clearly feel this nut taste, maybe mixed with petrol, which is a very interesting combination, but I'm very curious to hear what you think.
I agree with both aspects you mentioned, totally. I also experience a tiny bit of fruit on the back of your mouth when you let it go down, the liquid, which I would go into the direction of a peach, I think. It's very light, but there is kind of this fruity aspects. Maybe you could also say a very yellow pear, But for me, it's more towards the peach. And then there is one other aspect which I like a lot in this combination of petrol is this lightly salty aspect this wine has. I think we should also mention, I mean, this is now more than 5 years old and it still feels totally fresh, the experience of this wine, which is not always the case, and I must say I appreciate that a lot.
Yes, so what is it with the old wines? How does it affect the drink?
Especially with when it's bottled in corks, there's always a tiny bit of oxygen which goes into the bottle. That means there is a chemical process going on, and which is, for example, for red wines very welcome. For white ones, only partly, because the most obvious effect is that you would lose acidity. And acidity in white wines we mainly experience as a kind of freshness, which is very important, I guess. Otherwise, you get this kind of oily feeling, you know, with an old white wine. It's then the experience in the mouth is a bit sad. I would not say it has a big impact on the smell, but on the taste and on your kind of mouth experience, how you experience the liquid, it makes really a big difference. So I think this is very well done, that how they did it, and it kind of keeps this freshness. And you could also think, well, this wine is maybe only 2 years old, so you kind of don't experience an old wine here.
So it tastes much younger than it is.
Of course, we don't have the comparison because we don't have a bottle from 2022 here. I would not have said that this has been bottled in 2019, which is actually not right. They bottled it in 2020 because when they do a reserva, they keep it, I think, for 18 months. They keep it in the steel tank before they put it on the bottle. So they let it develop in the tank, of course, temperature controlled, and after 18 plus minus months, they put it in the bottle. So it's not that long in the bottle. So if we think it was harvested 2019, so plus 18 months, so it was bottled, I think, in spring 21. That means it's now 3 years in the bottle.
So I'm going to take another sip, and I try to detect the fruity aspect that I have not noticed at all.
Go ahead. Don't feel obliged.
Yes, I definitely see what you mean under the fruity side, but it's kind of wrapped into the nutty wooden petrol main taste of the wine.
I would not stay with the peach now as it develops. I think it goes more towards a kind of quince taste, which is super good integrated in the whole experience. But it's not this classical foreground fruity experience we often have, which with white wines, which can also be really great. It's very much integrated and only maybe experienced if you really focus on it.
Maybe it would be interesting to reveal the mystery about the name. Where did you discover? How do you know it? And what are the characteristic features of this grape?
It goes back to the 15th century, this grape. So it's been there for a long time. But till the late 80s, it was almost extinct. So nobody produced it anymore. Also in Piedmont, everybody was doing Chardonnay, Pinot Grigio, Pinot Blanc, Lugana, which is another grape from there. So it it got almost lost. And also in Italy, not only Germany, Austria, but also in Italy and France, all around in the 80s and 90s, a new generation of winemakers kind of came up, and a lot of things in winemaking changed. And they got very interested on the history of the region. So what kind of grapes did the parents, the grandparents use? Also, like this family generi, they did wine since generations. So, and the younger winemakers, they focused on it. So what did they do? And they researched a bit, and they found this grape Arneis and started to develop it again. And now in Italy, it's one of the great white wines they have. And it's maybe important to say also, it only grows in Piedmont. There are two main regions. It's the Roero and it's the Monforte d'Alba. So it's two parts of Piedmont where they grow it, but you won't find it somewhere else. I'm sure in the US and in Australia, they're trying everything, but it's not relevant what comes from there in terms of quantity and also quality. They also told us, as you remember, in Piedmont, they call this grape the little difficult one. It's a bit picky with the weather, and so it's not so easy to handle, which is maybe also a reason why it was not used anymore, especially after World War II, when this poverty was around and everybody was looking for big quantities, trying to get out of the poverty, having non-problematic grapes to produce easily. And of course, later the situation changed and the winemaking was going a lot towards more quality. That's why they luckily detected these qualities of this very special grape, Arneis.
So in a way, it's a renaissance, it's a revival of this grape that was forgotten. Indeed, we have visited the producer, their house. We have had a beautiful lecture on the process of wine production.
The person who kind of professionalized the winemaking in this family was the grandfather, and he got last year 100 years old, and they were celebrating his birthday. And that's also why this a bit strange name like Generi, which is clearly connected to general, where this strange name from this winery comes from. And they told us the story that this grandfather, who now became 100 in this very little village, he was kind of working as a mediator. So even if he was not the mayor officially, he was always the person who was able to resolve conflict and issues. You could imagine how that was like in the 1940s, also after the war. So it was all not so easy. And we unfortunately did not get to know him because he was not around when we were there, but he must be quite a spectacular personality. Everybody knows him in the region. So that's why they called this winery Generi. And then, from then onwards, I think when this grandfather did it, the whole business, it was still mixed agriculture they were doing. So they were doing in fruit, they were doing in vegetables, they were doing in nuts, of course, and they were doing in wine. And now it changed to a total, like 20, 30 years ago, they changed it to just a clear winery direction, which with also quite nice red ones, which we also partly tasted.
Coming back to the wine tasting of tonight, after the third sip, I can realize the fruity aspect, but I would describe it as a plum.
Interesting.
Taste.
Maybe I should take also another sip.
Yes, from my glass.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
I could clearly taste the garden plum, which has this beautiful dark purple color and yellow inside. This controversial sweet and sour mixture.
This is also, it's cool. I mean, of course, we just opened this wine half an hour ago and put it into the glasses. No, it changes, of course, every 10 minutes in the very beginning, later not so quickly anymore. But it's also great about this wine that it offers so many shapes. That's always, a clear hint that we are dealing here with a quite complex product.
And do you know something about the geographical position of Piedmont? And could you describe some of the features of this land? Why this wine grows only there? Why is it so special?
Why it only grows there, I can't answer this question. I think it's very often just a question of tradition, how it came up there. You know the region, it's really super beautiful hills. It's extremely cozy, and it's all about hazelnuts and wine there. And of course, they're more famous for the red wines. I mean, of course, Barolo is coming from there. Everybody knows that it's one of the two big brands in Italy in terms of red wine. It's Barolo and Brunello, so it's the two iconic wines, kind of. But they have a very relevant white wine production going on as well. Even if they're saying they're really struggling with the climate change now, as it's getting so hot in summer, and you remember when we talked, they're harvesting the white grapes end of August.
And normally that would be
mid-September, because it's like with every white wine, you should harvest it when it's not too hot. In summer, the nights are really hot, so you have the problem to bring these grapes very quickly to the cellar, that they don't start the fermentation before you put it into the tank, because then the material is not anymore really healthy. So it's really an issue kind of to deal with that logistically. And they also told us they're now kind of starting to change to direction of their vineyards away from south or southwest, more going to east or even north directed. So it means they have to deal with this issue, but as we luckily can see, they do it quite good.
Yes, I heard from other also wine producers that it's quite a practice nowadays to just invert your vineyards towards the northern direction, or somewhere where the sun is not so merciless.
Yes.
And that you could just deal with the wine production, that your grapes are not filled with sugar immediately, and that you can make dry wines out of that.
You always can make dry wines out of it, but when the sugar percentage is then so high when you harvest them that if you transform the sugar to a high amount into alcohol, then the wine is dry, but then you have a graduation of 16 or 17%. So who wants to drink that? I mean, that's terrible, of course, because it's so heavy, and it also has an impact on the taste. When your vineyard is directed towards north, you have already in the later afternoon, the sun does not directly shine on the hill, which means that it cools more down over the night, so it can make quite a difference, of course. And as they're not suffering in winter from so heavy cold, it's no problem for the plants.
Maybe just one last thing that I would like to discuss is connected to the percentage of alcohol, that it says 13.5 here in the wine that we are trying right now. Would that be a normal thing for a so-called reserva, a very special wine? And
yes.
Why is it called Reserva, by the way?
That's absolutely normal. I mean, for Italian white wines, as they have more sun, of course, and in the end, a bit more sugar amount in the grapes, 13.5 is a normal thing. Also, if you would have a Fiano d'Avellino or a Falangina or, whatever, something from Sicily or Campania, that's quite normal. A word to Reserva. The main thing about the Reserva is that the selection of the grapes which you use for the wine making is pretty radical. So you cut out more from the wine so that the whole power of the soil, that's where the taste comes from, gets into less grape material than it would be with an average wine. So it means that you make less liters per acre, clearly, because you select it out, but it gives you way more options to give the wine a quality and also a taste-wise a direction which you're looking for.
Well, if you're looking for a unique wine with a very strong and at the same time hazelnut taste, find the link in the description. Thank you very much for joining our wine tasting. Bye-bye.
Also from my side, thanks a lot for listening. Maybe you will check out a bottle of these. It's really highly recommended.